call to order the rescheduled 929th meeting of the Board of Directors of MSAD 27. Roll call.
Kelly.
Here.
Shannon Ludwig.
Here.
Katie Lavasser is not here. David Susi.
Here.
Tanya Bazin.
Here.
Toby Gendreau.
Here.
And Sarah Ashley should be here shortly.
We have a period of participation, public participation on items in the agenda. Is there anybody here who would like to be heard tonight? Seeing no volunteers, we'll go to approval of minutes for meeting number 928 from October 30, 2023.
I move to approve the meeting's minutes. Minutes of the meeting.
I understand.
Yeah.
Any can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I was not here at that meeting, and I was marked as present.
Oh,
And you voted.
Apparently.
No.
I had to read. I read over it. I'm like, maybe I was there, but no.
No, you were not.
You don't remember that? Nope, I don't.
We made note of that.
we'll make the changes and with those changes, we can send this back for another, we can move to approve it again, correct?
We can approve it
With the removal of Tanya as being present, would you like to make the motion again?
Sure. I move to approve the minutes of the meeting with Tanya's absence.
I second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to note that we did skip the adjustments to the agenda, and
Oh, I did.
I listed the adjustment under the wrong item number on your new agenda in front of you. So it should be under adjustments to the agenda, under items of business, new business, retirements. We're going to add an item 3, retirement of technology director.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Now we're at approval of financial statements.
Is there anything we need to know about it, Lucy? I always look at these and I'm like, I don't know.
The flow is pretty much the same as it was same month last year. The main difference in the expense side is under transportation. We paid for a bus this year, where last year we hadn't paid in the same month. And under facilities, we paid for the chunk of the heating for the UMFK, whereas last year, same month, we didn't have that expense. Everything else is pretty much lined up. A little bit of an increase due to salary increases, main purse increases, but everything is normal.
Motion to approve the October financial statement.
I'll second.
I have a question. What are we paying for heat at the UMFK? We are part of the heating plant, so we pay for a portion of the loan, and then we pay, I think it's 40% of the cost of the heat. The heat is piped underneath and heats this building and heats the Fort Ken Elementary building.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's piped underground.
I didn't realize that. Nice to know.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Passes. We have a presentation.
Yeah, we have Kayanne Nadeau, who is here. Last year at this time, she gave you a presentation on her first year doing student-centered coaching, and she's back this year with some additional information and some more data to share with you. So we welcome you, Kayanne, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Please stop me at any time and ask questions or comments about what I present. I'm really just going to go over, I'm going to review a little bit about what student-centered coaching is, because I know there were a couple new board members, and then just get into some of the data to share with you the impact that we're seeing. And then I'm also going to include the teachers' perspectives. I sent out a survey to teachers to see how they felt about coaching, so I'm going to include that in my presentation this time. So I just want to talk first a little bit about how student-centered coaching compares to other coaching models. And the coaching role has really evolved over the last, I think when it was first implemented, probably around 20 years ago. I had the opportunity to act as a coach in another district where, I wish there was a little pointer. Do you have a little?
I
Don't have that. But on the far right table, you can see how the relationship-driven coaching focuses less on student learning. And so when coaching first evolved, it was really about building relationships and providing resources and support to teachers. And then also in the middle where it says teacher-centered coaching, the focus was a lot on what the teacher was or wasn't doing. And also about whether they were implementing curriculum correctly and things like that. And had a little bit of a valuative connotation to it. And then now what we see more is the student-centered coaching is really focused on student learning, and the focus isn't on necessarily what the teachers are or not doing. It's more of a partnership, and the model starts with what needs the students have. So it's really evolved and threaded throughout all three types of coaching. There is relationship building, which is really important because you have to have that trust before you even start to partner with the teacher. And I believe we have that with the student-centered coaching. So the very bottom part, it's hard to see, but it says coach is viewed as a partner that supports the work necessary to keep students at the center and achieve proficiency and growth. So that's the model that we have in place, student-centered. And this was developed by Diane Sweeney and Leanna Harris. And what they present is these 7 core practices that are embedded in this type of coaching. So teachers, we utilize coaching cycles where teachers sign up to work and partner with me. We set standards-based goals around what kids need. We unpack that goal into how are they going to be accomplishing this standard, into learning targets and what that delivery is going to look like, the instruction to achieve that. And we do a lot of co-planning, centering student evidence at the forefront of it. One of the most powerful moves in student-centered coaching is the co-teaching, and that happens throughout the whole coaching cycle. Measuring the impact is also really important, where it's data-driven. And then also partnering with the school leader. I know Robby and I meet at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, just to review what's going on and talk about what's happening, and how teachers can be supported. A little bit more about it, just some of the components that you'll see every cycle. We usually, like I said, driven by standards base. They last between 4 to 6 weeks generally, but teachers can also sign up for a mini coaching cycle if they just want to target one of the learning targets as opposed to the whole standard. We have plannings per week. I go into the classrooms. It's all teacher driven, so it really is by teacher choice how often they would like me to come in. And it's that partnership again where we're co-teaching side by side. And oftentimes teachers can sign up as a group or do an individual coaching cycle. Yes,
So none of us here are teachers. So
Yeah.
I think what would be helpful for me is, could you give me, without using the teacher's name, could you give me an example of a type of intervention that a teacher would ask for, something you've done, so we can put it in context?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I'll get into that with some of the data that I'm going to share also. But so an example is like for a whole group, a teacher might sign up for a narrative writing piece and to have kids work on that narrative writing. So that could be a whole group co-teaching. We sit down, we plan what are the steps that we need to get kids to master that standard. I've also done small groups, right? Just one that I finished with the first grade teacher, Melissa Jean. We were working both in small groups and focused on individual phonics standards that those kids needed. So it looks really different with every teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll get into it a little bit more with.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you asked. Thank you so much. So here we go. This can be one example. So one of the goals is to measure the impact of what this coaching role does for teachers as well as students. And I want to just show really quickly oh, what did I do, Mr. Snow?
I don't have permission to view your.
Oh. Okay, so I won't go there. Now I need to get back. So I was going to show up here what we start off with. We start and end the cycle with a results-based coaching tool, and what that does, it kind of tells the story about the coaching cycle, and it shows, talks about what standards we're going to cover, what are the learning targets, the I can statements that the kids will come away knowing how they're going to achieve that standard, and it also shows where they fall in the pre-assessment as well as the post-assessment. Are you going to try to get it so it's not as blurry, the data there?
I was trying.
Yeah, I can kind of talk through it a little bit. So that results-based coaching tool is really important because after, like I said, it tells the story of a coaching cycle, and we set plans for kids that did not master the standard. We come up with a plan for how that's going to happen, because when our cycle's finished, the partnership, I go on to other classrooms, and what's important is that practices keep being put in place. And then the teachers also have a piece of it where they reflect after the cycle's over, what they come away with, and what do their students come away with learning. So this is an example of, like I said, the first grade classroom, Melissa Jean's class, and what we did is we focused on small group phonics instruction, and we divided the kids into different groups based on the features, the spelling features that they needed to learn, and decoding features. So this first graph down here shows that the pre-assessment, there was a good chunk, a little over 25% of the kids that were in the red. They didn't know that skill particularly well. And the yellow group is always developing, they're almost there. And then you had a chunk that were meeting. So this data actually comes from the STAR reading assessment, and that's a standards-based assessment. The teacher and I used our pre and post assessment with a phonics screener that was more of a classroom assessment, and the data shows it's pretty much in line with what the STAR is showing, which is important. But I wanted to pull the STAR data because I know last time there was questions about what that looks like with standardized testing. So as you can see with the post assessment, there were no kids in the red under this particular standard with knowing and applying grade level phonics and word analysis skills, and a larger portion in the green. So the kids are moving in the right direction, and that's what we like to see. And then the other standard we worked on in that area were high frequency words or sight words within those small groups. And again, there was a big chunk that were in the red, some in the yellow, and some in the green. And again, most kids all of them are out of that red part. They're working towards those sight words and moving into the yellow and the green. So that was one example of what it looked like after the coaching cycle was finished. Another example, this is another cycle that happened in grade 2. And this was more on a narrative piece. So the standard was writing a narrative that they can elaborate on. And what we did is, it was a whole group lesson. And so again, at the beginning of the coaching cycle, the kids they hadn't really been introduced to the second grade narrative standard. So a lot of them were in the red and a lot in the yellow, and there were none that were meeting the standard itself. At the end of the cycle, we had another writing prompt delivered, and kids were moving out of the red mostly into the green. There was 10% of the class still in the developing area. And what's important is when we end these coaching cycles, we look at those kids and we put a plan in place. What's going to happen with these kids and where can we go from there. So this was based on a personal narrative rubric, these assessment results.
For the 10% that's still below, you say you put a plan in place, what kind of plan do you normally put in place to help those children?
Yeah, so for
Okay.
this one, we take a look at where they fall. So I have an example of a third grade writing rubric that we use, and we score it once in pencil. You can't see it very well. But when we meet for the post-assessment, we score it in a different color. And then we usually talk about, okay, where is this student falling behind, and what are the next steps in the instruction to help that student move forward. And that's actually my next slide I was going to show. So what's important is that, the other piece that's important here is it's not always going to be about all these kids are there. And that's not the whole idea behind a coaching cycle. It's more the process involved and what happens after. And in this classroom, this is Ms. Tamar's classroom, it was similar. It was a personal narrative coaching cycle on that standard. We used the rubric, and this is an example from her classroom. But this is a hefty standard where you can see all the targets involved in writing a personal narrative. They have to, not a personal, but a fictional or imagined event. They have to include dialogue and sensory details and provide a sense of closure, so there's a lot more involved. So it's something that's worked on all year long. And so when we first started, there were 50% of the kids that couldn't master that standard, which is expected because it's the end of a third grade standard. 37 in the developing stage and only 13 in the mastery stage. And even kids that are mastering, there's potential for them to exceed the standard, and that's what you see in the blue on the second graph. The pre-assessment showed, the post-assessment, I'm sorry, after 5 to 6 weeks of instruction, there was only 7 kids that were in the red, 7%, I'm sorry, 53% in developing and 33 in mastery, and then there was a small percentage that even exceeded the standards. And I like to show this graph because, like I said, the process. And so Ms. Tamar provided another writing prompt, or not prompt, but another writing piece, opportunity for kids to practice, showing their mastery and after some instruction. And she invited me in. Sometimes the impact isn't measurable, and it's through even the conversations that happen between the coach and the teachers. You can't measure those outcomes, and that's where some of the most powerful things happen. So even just today, she invited me in to have the kids share their stories of another piece that they did beyond this cycle, and the growth was amazing, to hear them to share, and they were so proud. And I brought an example of one student who was in the red when I left that classroom, and she has mastered the standard. And I wanted to, is it okay to read a little bit? Yeah. So this was a student who struggled with the writing in the beginning. She was definitely in the red. And a little bit of what she says in her story about a reindeer. 'Twas the week before Christmas, and all through the stables, not a reindeer was awake except for just one. For Mary couldn't sleep because the very next week was Christmas Eve. Finally, Mary couldn't wait any longer, so she went to go see the presents under the tree. She opened just one. That was very interesting. And what did she see? She saw a bucket of paint. And to her surprise, it was her favorite colored one, a bucket of sparkly blue goo. She wanted to get a better look, but accidentally her nose got a little too close, and in it went to the sparkly blue paint. She ran to her mom. Her mom said, "What happened to you?" Mary explained what had happened to her. Her mom wasn't that happy to hear what had happened, but she told her that everything would be okay. And the very next day, Mary went to go see what job she had gotten, and she cheered with glee. She got the lead job of guiding Santa's sleigh, and she went to go tell her family and friends. They were so happy for her that she'd lead the sleigh. They wanted a victory party to celebrate her, but guiding the sleigh was on the top of the list. That Christmas Eve was more foggy than most, and the elves were busy rushing and tripping over themselves. Santa said, "Mary, with your nose so sparkly, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?" And ever since that Christmas, Mary and the other 8 reindeer hook up the sleigh and deliver the gifts to all the boys and girls across the USA. So a student that was struggling in the beginning with that, if she were to score again, which she will be doing, we haven't had a chance, this is her rubric, and she really needed more on the conclusion. And so you can see how after more instruction was in that area, that the student has met and even exceeded some of the standard. So that was a third grade example. Another type of coaching cycle that I've done this year that I didn't have any types for last year was a planning cycle. And this is a 5th grade example of, again, using the STAR data. So there's a really neat report in the STAR we can access called the Standards Mastery Report. And it breaks down the percentage of each child's mastery of all the reading standards, or whether it was reading or math. So this particular teacher wanted to focus on planning units so that she was really hitting what her students needed. The reading curriculum in 4th and 5th grade is very rigorous, and it's hard to fit everything in. So we get together monthly and look at that curriculum and decide, okay, these are the targets. We took the Standards Mastery Report and we pulled out the data that the kids were struggling with the most. So these 4 graphs are different strands of the literacy standards. The first one is a vocabulary strand, and whenever we were planning, we made sure we focused on at least these 2 standards at least, because these were 2 of the standards within that vocabulary strand that kids were really struggling with. And the same thing with the craft and structure strand on the right top, and integrating knowledge and key ideas and details. So, like I said, we really made sure that part of her lessons were implementing these particular standards, that we're not skipping through these ones. And so she had a progress monitoring. The first part of this top graph shows the benchmark assessment in the fall for this particular standard in vocabulary, and where the kids fell now. The red shows about the same. That's actually 2 students out of our classroom. The yellow's lessened, and the green. And it's so it's pretty consistent with the standards that she really focused on. The first bar of the graph and the second bar of each standard shows growth, which is really impressive. You can see like some of them, even the red, like I said, it's the same 2 kids, but when we look at their percentiles, individual percentiles, they all pretty much moved a little bit, but they might not have gotten out of a certain category or a certain area. So that's important to see that, start not just assessments from classroom data, but standardized assessments are showing growth. So the other thing I included in this presentation, I thought it was important to hear what teachers felt about having a coach in the classroom and the coaching process in general. And I got to tell you, I have the best job because I get to work with the most amazing teachers. I really do. The level of professionalism that our teachers have and their reflective practice is really incredible. I've worked in several different schools around the state, and it's just really been something to work alongside the teachers that I get to work with every day. So this shows, and I'm not going to be able to access that survey, am I? Probably not. Oh, no, I'm not. Shoot. All right. I can share it with you, Mr. Nadeau, Mr.
Yep.
Sarah,
Yeah, I can share it.
But this first slide, anyway, shows how the very first year of the grant, it was only available to K-2 teachers. It was new, and we were trying to all work it out and learn from each other. And so 85% of teachers signed up for a coaching cycle in that year of K-2 teachers. And then the second year, year 2, it was opened up from K-6. And there were 80% of teachers that had signed up. Some signed up again, and there were new teachers that hadn't been part of a cycle that were also included in there. And this year, the third year of the grant, so far there's 46% of teachers that have signed up for a coaching cycle. So, you know, that shows that teachers are wanting this, they want the support, and they're seeing the impact it's having on students in their classroom.
So this program isn't mandatory for teachers to sign up and do a cycle with you?
It is not mandatory, no, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I get that a lot. I really feel, and I think, you know, student coaching center model in general, we can't make it mandatory, or I don't believe we can, because I feel like it would be something that teachers felt they had to do. And I don't know about you as a learner, but in general, when kids are offered choice and adults are offered choice, there's a larger amount of learning that occurs and more motivation to learn, because we're never done learning. And so I don't feel like making it mandatory is the right course of action. I feel like sharing the data is a good thing to do, so teachers see, you know, how much it impacts. And from an administrative point, I know Mr. Nadeau, you know, the evaluative piece is part of his job, not mine. And teachers don't see it as evaluative, or at least I hope they don't, because that's not what it's intended for. It's really intended for just a partnership and a collaboration so that we can move learning forward. And I don't know, Mr. Nadeau, do you want to add to that?
He stepped up.
Oh, he stepped up. Mr. Anderson?
No, I agree with you. I don't think it should be mandatory either. I think that the more teachers see the data, the more teachers hear and see the evidence, they're stepping up. They're saying, okay, I can try this. And it's just a natural thing.
One thing that Kayanne did not speak about is the fact that in order for that relationship to really click, you have to have a coach that the staff believe in and the staff respect, and Kayanne has that with her colleagues. So that's why this model really works well, because Kayanne does have those expertise, and she's truly in there just to be a support for those learners in partnering with that teacher, and that really means a lot as well, and it works out because of that. So kudos to you for being that person and sharing that.
Can I get out of yours and get back in mine so I can share some of that survey? Because I think it's important to see the comments and how they feel,
While Kayanne
Is it Fort Kent?
It's the library. The CHS library. While Kayanne's looking for that, I will also share with you that the Aroostook County Superintendents were meeting this past month, and one of the roundtable discussions was about programs that really move student learning in a positive way. And I spoke about Kayanne and the Fort Kent Elementary's student-centered learning. And since then, I've had 3 different superintendents reach out to me to get more information about what we're doing. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be reaching out to Kayanne, surprise, to find out more and learn more about our program, because it really is making a positive impact.
So this was thank you, Mr. Sirwa. This was a survey I sent out, and it was anonymous. Teachers didn't have to write their name, and the emails weren't collected. So I asked them to just say, what type of coaching they've signed up for, and most people have signed up for a full cycle, like you can see in the graph. Have they participated in individual or with a group? And again, most people chose individual, but we do have some teachers, RISE, for example, they've always signed up as a group, and other teachers have as well. This is an important piece here. What have they taken away by participating in a coaching cycle? And so new teaching strategies was one that they mostly all, I think 17 people responded to the survey, and 16 out of the 17 said they take away new teaching strategies. And also tracking student growth was high up there. That data analysis in order to differentiate, and their reflection on instructional practices and set next steps was also something that they take away from these coaching cycles. And then just some of the comments. Yeah, I was very humbled to see some of these comments, but again, I think it all goes to show what professional teachers we have and reflective teachers we have. Some of the things just having a sounding board in the profession meant so much. When something didn't work, to have someone to reach out and to ask for thoughts and advice was priceless. It was nice to be able to focus on only strategies students are in need for. Working with a coach is insightful and beneficial. It provides resources and lots of teaching strategies to meet and set goals. So just, the comments go on and on. So I'm glad I did send the survey out. I was hesitant at first. I didn't know, what the reaction would be. But it just helps me to want to do better and to support teachers even more and work alongside of them. Okay, so the last few questions were, do you feel having a coach in our school is beneficial? And 100% that replied said that they felt it was. And would you like to see the position continue beyond the 3-year grant? And 100% would like to see that happen. And then some comments, if yes, then why they feel that is important. I can share, Michelle Dubois signed her name. A position like this is something that benefits the students and the teachers. When I'm at a loss for ideas on how to approach something, I have a trained helper to guide me and give me advice. We work as a team, and that feels really affirming as a teacher. I feel listened to and like my work matters. At the end of the day, we all want what is best for our students, and working with Kayanne has just been that. So again, it's, coming from the teachers, it's powerful to see that coaching does work for both teachers and students. And she says trained helper, but I really feel like when I go into a classroom, we're all experts. We're all bringing something to the table to just get those kids moving forward. And I learn just as much from them as they learn from me. So, yep. I think that's it. I just had one more slide. Diane Sweeney, the founder for coaching, student-centered coaching, had written this in the book, and I just thought it was important to share because her philosophy, I align with this philosophy that we are smarter together. Student learning is the shared purpose, that they're all our students. The job of teaching is way too complicated to do alone. We need each other to support each other. We're never done getting better at our craft. We're always learning. Never lifelong learners in this profession. And coaching is for everyone because it's about continual improvement. So not just new teachers, but veteran teachers as well. Any other questions or comments? I'm sorry if I took too much time.
No, it's very interesting stuff.
How many, sessions would you say you do in a year?
Oh, that's a good question. So the general rule of thumb is to have between 4 and 5 coaching cycles happening at a time. 65% of your time should be spent in the classroom. And so I do have other job-related things that I do. I work with some small groups for Title I, and then I have duties, of course, and other things. But I try to strive for 4 to 5 coaching cycles for each round. And the last 2 years, I was able to get in 4 rounds. So generally, I guess I haven't counted them up, but anywhere between around 15 to 20 cycles a year would be a goal.
So, the risk of sounding really dumb, what's a cycle?
Well, the coaching cycle is what they sign up for when I go in for the 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so that's a 4 to 6
Yeah.
weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So.
And
yeah.
how many people did you send the survey? Did you send the survey out to everybody you did an introduction
I
with?
sent it out to everybody who has participated so far. So it was 25 teachers. We have 24 currently K to 6, but last year, the first 2 years of the grant, we had an additional teacher that did what they called mission, and she had her own classroom, and she was part. So there are 25 people I sent it out to, and 17 responded. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I know Tanya asked the question about, is it volunteer? And Mr. Nadeau wasn't here when that was answered. I believe from an administrative perspective, Mr. Nadeau, if you had concerns with a teacher or the data coming out of that classroom, you would strongly urge them to sign up for a cycle?
I would encourage them for a cycle, and it's happened, and they've taken up that advice and been on cycles, and it's been a good experience for everyone.
Thank you.
And I would just add to just a couple comments that were made during while Kayanne was presenting. Is, number one, the professional respect that Kayanne has from the staff, I think is very, very well shown in that survey. Because they were not just being polite for Kayanne. That's what I hear on a daily basis about the work that she does. And then the biggest thing is, you know, and the one teacher I had asked to do a coaching cycle, you know, they came back to me earlier this year. They're still using those strategies. So it was a coaching cycle of a few weeks that's being continuously used in that classroom, and that teacher has improved in that area. So.
Thank you, Kayanne.
All right, all set.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. If I shut down, it should just get out.
Yeah, I'll click it up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent.
I just have a couple of things. The first thing, you should have a priority notice in your packet, and this is going on 3 or 4 weeks old now, but we did have what's called the MOVEit Global Security Incident. Every staff member in the state of Maine received this priority notice. I made sure to push it out to our staff so that they were aware of it. Essentially, the system that all of our certification information is housed was hacked, and information was or could have been compromised, and the DOE just wanted to provide some supports. Knock on wood, to date, no SAD 27 employee has come to our office to talk about their data being at risk, or them being having been impacted by this. So I don't believe that it has impacted the SAD 27 staff. Lucy was able to get through on their 1-800 line and basically, you know, go through motions. She found out she wasn't hacked during that phone call, and anybody that would have been, they were offered from the DOE some protections in order to, you know, clarify this and provide some additional supports. So luckily for us, as far as I know, it has not impacted our employees. The second thing I wanted to share with you, I went to the Maine School Superintendents Association Executive Committee meeting last week, and one of the big topics that was being discussed, we had Thomas Keller, who's on the State Board of Education. He chairs the Certification and Higher Ed Committee, and the legislature was actually tasked this committee with gathering information around the 2022 revisions of Chapter 115, which is the state certification for teachers and education personnel. They made some changes in 2022 that were not popular, and so the state board has heard about that, and again has tasked this committee with kind of doing some background work. One of the big topics is athletic director certifications. The way that it was before 2022, if you wanted to become an athletic director, you could simply apply. You had to have a bachelor's degree, and they would issue you a 5-year initial certification. In order to get recertified after 5 years, you had to take specific courses in athletic administration, but nothing more. When they changed it in 2022, they made it a rule that you had to receive your principal certification within 5 years. So every athletic director in the state that is not aspiring to be a principal is going, are you serious? And so it caused quite a big uproar throughout the state. Luckily, the committee is recommending that that requirement be removed, the principal certification. They are recommending a teacher certification as one of the requirements, or more stringent course requirements beyond what they had before 2022. So it looks like athletic directors will either have to be teacher certified, which ours is, or they will have to take specific courses in order to keep that certification. Another one that was discussed was reciprocity for out-of-state certifications. They're hopeful that the DOE can basically put a list together of thumbs-up states that the state of Maine can basically look at and say, yeah, the certification is going to count, and thumb-down states like Massachusetts has very, very high rigor for teacher certification. Yet when a teacher from Massachusetts applies here in Maine, it takes just as long as somebody who might be applying from a state that has lower certification. So they're hoping that the state can fast track that way. If we get applicants from those states that are easily approved, we know that we're recommending somebody who might not get us in trouble down the road with certification. So that was a big one as well. And they also talked about some social worker to guidance counselor pathways that the DOE is looking to investigate, because many of the state's guidance counselors have come from social work background, yet the process to get from one to the other is not as easy as it can be. So those were the big topics, and we were hopeful that our recommendations as a superintendent's association got to the state board when they met on December 13, and a lot of our recommendations did get shared at that time. So this will go to the full state board in their next meeting when they make some recommendations to the legislature. That's all I have for updates from my desk. You do have administrative reports from Mr. Kaleta, Mr. Nadeau, Ms. Kelly, and Ms. Stacey Steele, who are all here, and can answer questions you have.
Robby, or Mr. Nadeau?
Yes.
My kiddos were coming home telling me that the school concert was going to be at night, then it ended up being during the day. Is there a way we can plan that a little bit more in advance for the spring concert or in future concerts going forward? I've had a lot of parents kind of like really stumble last minute, myself included, to find coverage or days off to go to the concert and whatnot.
Yep. So,
Okay, I would like to see an evening event, would be nice. So like significant others can come too, if possible.
yeah, that's a conversation that we're having.
Okay. Okay,
There are two sides to that. So
absolutely.
that's something we'll find consensus on.
Okay. Thank you.
I had the great fortune of being Mr. Nadeau and Mr. Anderson on concert day, because they were both out. And the best way I can describe both Heidi and Leah in the main office is they're absolute ninjas. Because there's a lot of moving parts with, and in this building as well, with kiddos being dismissed and going to the UMFK. And so there's a lot of conversations that, you know, that Mr. Nadeau has been having about this disruption of education and looking at the nighttime model and how we do that. We just want to make sure that we have all the supports in place in order to pull that off. So I think we're going to have some more productive conversations, and I think you're right. The best way to approach it is to have an announcement well in advance so people can put it on their calendars, and because it's a big event. Like, I took a panoramic shot.
It was insane. The AM concert was insane. The
It's
attendance that was there.
Yeah. When you have the entire one side of UMFK gym, you know, sectioned off, and there's standing room only, that's amazing. A lot of public participation, and I think, you know, having a night concert, you might even have more, because work won't be a deterrent.
You may need to
We
rearrange.
often get asked why it's not at the elementary school, but if you take one look at that picture,
Oh, God,
that's
no.
why we can't do it at the elementary school.
I think you might have to do both bleachers, like kind of like graduation style, and kind of have the kids in the middle, so that way, 'cause there
I
was a
wanna
lot.
publicly say though that like having it at night does mean that all staff has to show up at night too. Like, it's great for parents, but like I want to
I don't
like
believe so.
recognize.
I don't believe so,
No.
because I think if you let the parents be in charge of their children, to bring them there and to sit with them and then to take them home, I don't believe we need kiddos to go sit in a section with their classmates. like they normally would. They would just get up, you know, second grade and go up and sing, third grade go up. So I
And
think we
it's
can do
probably below, it's probably something that is handled somewhere other than this.
it. Right.
But one consideration that I just want to throw out there, if you don't have it during the day, is that just like with sports, there are kids that won't be able to participate because they don't have rides. And so just to consider that too. As you're,
Yeah, those are all pieces of
Yeah.
that discussion. Transportation is a piece of it, parents being able to go is a piece of it.
Yeah.
Even doing it on, which night do we do it on?
Right.
It is an issue, how much staff support do we need there?
right.
You know, those types of things. It's a difficult question to resolve.
I think a lot of children would have a hard time just separating from their parents to actually go on stage in the front of everyone compared to showing up with teachers. Like mine, for example, wouldn't go in front of everyone unless they were brought with the school. So that's my opinion on my kids anyways.
It's tough. I think the parents should go up and sing with them.
That would be awesome.
It's just, it's
I'm totally
interesting.
behind that.
What's interesting for me is,
The
right,
different aspects.
the different aspects, because my son, who's in 6th grade, hasn't sung for 2 years, and I get pictures, and he stands there respectfully the entire time. He will be happy to never have to do that again.
Some students do get dismissed because they cannot take the stage anxiety.
Yeah.
So they get dismissed and then they come back after the concert's over. So it's all over the place.
I do think we need to fix the staging and placement of the amount of people that show up. Especially we had an extra group of 3rd graders added on to the pre-K to 3rd
Mhm.
grade. There's a lot more people, and a lot of people came out to me saying just, it was too congested if we had both stage and maybe even kids all along the wall or something,
Mhm.
where
We've done that once before, right? We have it set up the other way.
We've done a few different alignments.
Yeah.
But if you change your alignment where it's more angled, and then you move the stage back, and then the people on the bleachers can't see the kids on the
Yeah.
stage, they can't take pictures, I mean, there's.
That's
So
true,
even
too.
even the night of the concert, if you look at the 15th, well, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before that, there were games, either middle school or high school games. And then this week, there was games every day but Monday, which I don't wanna do a
But-
nighttime concert on a Monday, you know, there's just so many different pieces of it.
If it was something that could be, because we know we have a spring concert, we know we have a winter concert. If it's something that we know ahead of time, could it be something that we write into the school calendar? So that way when they plan sports events, they could plan it around concert nights? So that way they don't have to do it on a Friday night or like,
Yeah. When we know dates well in advance, I go tell Josh, don't schedule anything on this date. So it would
That's
be
what I
all
mean,
about
like-
identifying early.
can it be something that just is written into a school calendar?
It could be, we have a shared
Yeah.
unified calendar, but we could definitely do something to take care of it. We could put it on our website, on the calendar on the website.
I think an events calendar would be really handy.
Yeah.
Because there's often stuff happening at the school, and our children are not always good communicators with the parents, so we find out after the fact. As they get older, you think they get better, they don't.
There's one, isn't there?
They do a pretty good job of updating the events
did-
calendar, so on the district website, and I'll put it up on the screen so everyone can
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, 'cause I didn't know there was one.
I didn't know there was one either.
And at
We're
one
watching
point,
the-
there was a way to, maybe it was only as a parent though, that you could see the notes that came home. But maybe that's a parent login thing, I don't know.
That only gets sent home once
Maybe
in a
it
while
was.
from teachers or gets in their school bags one way or another.
Yeah.
I think it finds its way to the backseat of the car pretty often, crumpled in a pile. I didn't realize we had the school, so I've been accessing the school Facebook page, which doesn't have a whole lot of
Right.
information except for sports.
So SAD27.org, we have the event calendar here. And when you go to the event calendar, it'll have all your athletic events, your CHS events, your FKES events. And you can toggle things off. So if I just want to see FKES events, I click on FKES, or if I just want to see athletic events. So you can see all of the events that are happening throughout the district in every school. And I've been on the administrators, so they've been doing this pretty faithfully, and it's pretty well up to date. So everything should be there.
I didn't know about it. I didn't.
And maybe what we could do is maybe we need to send out a notification on Facebook to go here for events. That's probably what we'll do. We'll just get everyone to understand that's where our events are housed.
Maybe you can do one of those calls to us at supper.
Sorry.
And then my wife, and then me again.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Question for John, the WIAs, what's the change?
Well, this is our third year with NOEA, but last year they went from the growth to what's called the through year. So last year we had the growth in the fall, and then we had through year. So you really, it was kind of apples and oranges still a little bit, but this year it's the first time that's going to be NOEA through year in the fall and NOEA through year in the spring. So the data should be an accurate representation of what's going on.
So there are two different sets of tests.
Yeah, they're pretty similar, but they're not exact.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so, but this year will be the first year that we've had, the 2 through years in the same year. I have a feeling they're gonna keep the idea, it's a pretty reliable test, it's been around for a long time. We're kind of hoping and praying that they do keep this, so we can get this longitudinal data that we really yearn for over time. It says a lot, so if you have one test, like I said, we've had over 5 changes in the last 9 years, so really a lot of the state data is kind of, it's apples and oranges, So now with, with having this, moving this point forward, we'll have good longitudinal data, but we still have our star data that we've kept for years, that gives us that longitudinal data. Maybe in time, when WIA sticks with us, we can exit from star and stick with just one testing, so we don't have to pay for the star anymore.
Thank you. Any other questions for any of the administrators? Seeing none, we'll move on. Committee reports.
For policy committee, item 1, we just have one first read, and this was one that I neglected to put in your packet last meeting. Policy GBCC, employee use of cell phones. And you'll see on that one, the bottom of the first page, you'll see some green font. We've added some language to that final sentence based upon the need and availability, and that's specific to the district-owned cell phones. And that was the only recommendation that the policy committee had. So this is just first read, it's just FYI. I'll bring it back to you next month for approval. Moving on from there are our second read, and we have a whole slew of revised policies. DB annual budget, DBG budget adoption process, DI fiscal, 8 accounting and reporting, DID inventories, DIDA fixed assets, DIE audits, DJ bidding and purchasing requirements, DJR the federal procurement manual, DJH purchasing and contracting, DKC expense reimbursements, DN school property disposal, GBE BB staff contact with students, GBGAA bloodborne pathogens, GCSA employee technology and internet use, GCSAR employee technology internet use rules, GCSB social media, EBAA chemical hazards, ECB pest management in schools, and IMG animals in school. And those were discussed last meeting. They're coming to you for second reading.
So we went through these in the last meeting, I think with a little more depth and explanation of the deviations from the original policies and how they were changed, and the reason they were changed. And I don't think you weren't
No,
here.
I was not here.
I don't want to feel like we're rushing anybody, but I know we discussed many of these things, and I don't recall in this batch, there being a whole lot of discussion. A lot of it was modernization of language, eliminating some redundancies and making and reflecting changes in state and federal policy that we needed to change. Does anybody remember anything from the last time that they felt we needed to address?
Just some of them had complete whole changes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some are completely rewritten.
Is that, it was on regards to the state law or the state lawyer for schools to change and redact that whole thing, right?
A lot of these are 2000 policies. They were written 23 years ago. And so over time, law cases happen and things happen throughout the state that our attorneys will turn around and say, you should probably update that policy because they'll recommend these policies to remain fully management.
I think another reason was just our experiences, like personally, like the animals in school one,
Yeah.
right, was, it's really nice to have, a class dog, but if it's not like advancing the education that's happening there, and it's likely a distraction, then probably shouldn't be happening. So like that one was a rewrite with some additional stuff.
I would motion to approve the second read and adopt the revision of policies DB, DBG, DI, DID, DIDA, DIE, DJ, DJR, DJH, DKC, DN, GBE, BB, GBGAA, GCSA, GCSAR, GCSB, EBAA, ECB, IMG. OMG.
And I'll second it.
I think whoever seconds it has to read all of them.
Oh, God. All right, let me get started. I retract my no, I'm just kidding.
Okay, any further discussion on these? Seeing none, all those in favor of these amendments? Unanimous?
And the last one is a second read of a new policy, and that is the infamous BHC, Board Relationships and Communications with Staff. We had added a second clarifying paragraph in the introduction, and then also some clarifying information as well under the board and teachers and other school employees, and shifting some of the board communication with staff information up rather than leaving it down at the bottom.
I don't like this policy. Plain and simple.
Surprise.
I know. I've never liked this policy. It's been a year. Still dislike this policy. I'm inclined to reject it completely. I think for a number of reasons. I mean, one is if somebody wants to talk to us and they're being inappropriate, we should be able to redirect them and saying that's not an appropriate course of conversation with us. Or have you talk to your administrator. I mean, it's up to us to do our jobs. And I don't think we should create an entire policy around how people interact with board members, especially where they're also our constituents. And that raises a whole other issue for me. I think it's
As far as them being our constituents, though, once we've been voted in, we're supposed to represent the students, not our... When the woman came to one of our meetings, and she made it very, very clear that once we were voted to this position, our job was to hear the concerns and bring them in, but that our job was to represent the students, to make decisions based on what was best for our students, and not what the population that voted us in wanted. But those two things are not necessarily the same.
I understand there's a distinction there, but those are two separate things, and I don't think one gets rid of the other. I think we ultimately always have a responsibility to our constituents, otherwise there's no point in electing us.
And you feel it, do you feel this policy says that we can't?
This policy says that the employees can't talk to us, or shouldn't talk to us, and we shouldn't initiate conversation with employees. Explicitly. Page 2. Communication with staff with the responsibility of the board as a whole, individual board members should refrain from initiating communications or a conversation with staff members on their own. No.
So the teachers can't have conversation with a board member.
And we can't have conversations with them.
Then how would the teachers be helping the students progress if they can't have a conversation with the board and bring that up to them?
I don't think there's a problem. I don't think we've had a problem. I think it's a solution for a problem we don't have. That's my assessment. When people come up to me and say, I've got a beef, I say, have you talked to your school administrator? If they say I have and I don't think they understood me, have you talked to Ben? And if they have and I don't think they've understood, I talk to Ben. And I say, somebody's come to me with a problem. Can you talk to me about it? I think that's an appropriate use of our system. I think putting in harsh rules to navigate how we interact with each other as human beings is awful. I mean, we've done this for a long time, and I don't think we've had any major blow-ups. I mean, we've navigated these issues. And the thing is the root, I'm always going to go back to the root statute because that's what I do for a living. You're going to get the statute. Statute 28 MRSA section, I want to say 13201?
1001.
1001.
Subsection 21.
I'm going to paraphrase because I'm not fast at Googling. It says there's, employees should be able to talk to school board members anytime. That's what the law says. That's what the statute says. And they said it to Drummond Woodsum and they came up with this. This is very different than what the statute says. And that's troubling to me because our legislature has given us marching orders that we should allow people to talk to us freely. And the lawyers have said, well, by freely we mean through your representative, through this, through that, through that. It seems like overly cumbersome, and anytime somebody puts obstacles to communication, it makes me really nervous.
A lot of the teachers and stuff are parents to the individuals that are having trouble too, so it would make it hard for a student to talk to a board member. If they don't feel comfortable, they tell their parents will tell the board member, so I agree to that.
So I'm not saying that, I mean, I think, yeah. If a parent or a teacher or a student wants to come talk, I'm wondering what the spirit is behind that sentence, because it almost seems contradictory to the rest of the policy.
And like I said, we don't have to have a policy here at all. We literally never had one.
Well, I guess that's what I'm wondering. Why? Was there an incident that happened
It was just recommended.
by?
There was something that happened, yeah. The legislature had a bill submitted by some teachers and teacher organizations saying, we want to be able to talk to our school boards. And so they came up with this bill that Toby cited the numbers, and I can read it to you. It says, communication with school employees and the public. It says, the school board shall regularly communicate with school employees in the school board's school administrative unit and members of the public who reside within the boundaries of the school administrative unit. It's really simple, right? Mm-hmm. But there's concern that when you're running a big organization, like a school, and it's an organization that doesn't respond to a board of directors, but it responds to the public, that the board that's ultimately in charge of and ultimately responsible in the big sense might be susceptible to people who might be upset who are going to go complain to the board members. Classic example would be, say there's a disciplinary matter in the school, and the school sets out to fire an employee that maybe has very significant support in the community. You know it's going to be controversial, right? And so what you can often see in a situation like that is school board members getting calls in the middle of the night saying, don't fire X and Y. Or worse than that, getting a phone number saying, if you fire X and Y, I'll shoot out your porch light, So you don't want that. You definitely don't want that. On the other hand, what if you had a math teacher who was a really good math teacher, and the school superintendent or the principal said, we're changing the math program, we have a new math for you, we want you to teach this. And the teacher says, oh, I taught that for us, a disaster. Well, we decided you're going to teach it. If that teacher goes to a school board member and says, you know what, I think they're making a big mistake here, can I talk to you about that? Should that teacher be able to talk to the board member? I think so.
Right. This is saying that individual board members should refrain from initiating communication.
They couldn't talk at all.
Right. No, but this is saying that I shouldn't go in.
Oh, yeah, it goes the other way around too, in an earlier
Oh, does
paragraph.
it? Am I just not reading? I mean, I felt like I read it, but apparently I
That's
didn't.
what it says. So the problem really is one distinction, making the right distinction, right? What's the purpose of the communication? Everybody
wait,
agrees.
Hold on.
Sure.
Does it actually say in here that staff can't come to me individually?
Let's have a look at it. That would be the
Because-
relationship between board and teachers and other school employees. It says individual employees.
Expected to utilize the
Yeah.
communication channels established through board policies.
Means you have to talk to
31.
the superintendent, the superintendent takes your issue.
Teachers and other school board members to answer the appropriate steps through chain of commands and continue to have unresolved issues may reach out to board members to seek guidance.
Right, so they can.
Mhm.
They
They can
can.
talk to their superintendent,
And at
chain
wi-
of command.
But doesn't the
they
second
may
one-
reach out to board members to seek guidance. It says right there, they can reach out.
But wouldn't
Also
these
talks
two
here.
contradict each other then?
The board
We
encourages
can't ask
informal
them how things are going.
Conversations with all staff.
regarding.
This is, this.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not seeing it as negative as you are,
Why do
Toby,
you
I
think
guess.
we need it?
Well, I guess that was my question, is why, so to me, when I was reading through this, what I was seeing this as was I'm not going in and saying, hey, Mr. Anderson, tell me all about this and what I'm supposed to think and what I'm supposed to vote, or going to those individual teachers who maybe have a beef and stirring up trouble. That's what I was seeing it as, is sort of the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting, and not as I can't hear feedback, but that it's not up to me to go in with my agenda and get the information from key people.
Why can't
So
you?
I guess that's why because that would be up to the board to decide what information we wanted as a whole, as opposed to what's Shannon's agenda here.
Why can't Shannon have an agenda and talk
Well-
openly about policy matters?
Right, but there should be there's a way that I should bring that up as well, and that would start here with this board. I don't know. That's the way I'm leaning with it, but that's not exactly what this says. So that's why I'm kind of wondering, was there an incident? Did this sort of thing happen?
As
Just
far as I
triggered
know,
by
the
the
only incident
legislation.
was this legislation passing.
Right.
Because the lawyers at Drummond Woods have put this together in the wake of this legislation, this one sentence piece of legislation that Dave read to you. And I think for me, period, not as of anything, for me, period, when there's a law that's passed that says thou shalt not, and then there's a policy that comes out that says, well, except.
Right.
And I don't think we ever had a problem with that. I mean, I've been approached by teachers. I've approached teachers when I had questions, and asked them how things were going. There's no agenda there. It's just I'm ultimately responsible for these employees on some level too, being an elected individual.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think
And I
that's
think being able
true.
to chat with them, I mean, if we have a rogue board member who's doing things that are making people uncomfortable, that's another story, but I don't think we've had.
And I think that's
feel like
what,
that's what this was trying to.
Yeah.
the policies are created to.
But we don't have it.
Right now, but these policies.
We also don't have leprechauns, we don't have a leprechaun policy.
Yeah, but this board does
True.
not stay forever.
Right.
Just
Well, no,
because
but-
me and Sarah aren't gonna go cause trouble, doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't get,
Anything that
doesn't get
prohibits
elected.
somebody from talking or engaging, I think is facially wrong.
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of words here, but I think what the intent was, this green paragraph that talked about exactly what you talked about, Toby, with if someone comes to you with something and you say, have you gone to your building administrator? You're not satisfied. It gives, I think it's good to have something that gives this board direction for that, yes, it should go, if they want, it's informational or whatever versus looking for resolve. You have an issue that wants resolve. As a board member, I can't do that until it comes through the proper channels. But if you want to share about your experiences, and even I would be fine striking the last bit about me asking, right?
Yeah.
Having open conversation, but clarifying that I, as an individual, you can't start with me, and I, as an individual board member, am powerless. The power lies in the board.
There's always extremes, right, to everything. So you hear stories about, you know, a board member starting a Facebook Live page where they encourage parents to go in and talk to them about all of their concerns so they can take that to, you know, the rest of the board and the administrator. That's an extreme, you know, and something like this, I think, is created for those extremes where you don't want a board member or an administrator to go rogue and think that they are above. We don't have a problem in the district. We don't. Would we someday? Perhaps, but right now we don't. You know, so I would lean towards Toby and saying we don't really need this. We don't, but we don't know what the future holds either. Right.
Shall it be worded differently then, where it explains like you shouldn't make a Facebook page and say like come see me with your problems, but if you've gone through the proper channels, like what we're all saying, but they still aren't being heard, can't they go to the board
Absolutely.
members?
Would you?
So shouldn't it be read
Yeah.
But there's no.
differently?
And the thing is with this, like, even if we change it, there's no remedy. So let's say tomorrow, I decide I'm going into the elementary school and I'm gonna raise hell. Even when we pass this, I'm gonna go and talk to every teacher and say, I think we should get rid of the guidance office. And I'm gonna tell you how we're gonna do it, right? There's no remedy. It serves no function. It doesn't actually stop the bad behavior you're suggesting. It's just a thou shalt not, but there's no remedy. It's not you're gonna be barred from the board if you act badly. It's
Isn't
no,
that the
you're
same
gonna.
for all of our policies?
No, many of our policies have things we need to do, but this doesn't have the power to attack the board members. These policies are not, they don't bind the board members except to a certain point, and even then, there's no sanction.
I feel like we've had this conversation about something.
It was probably this policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for 2 years.
No, I feel like it was about Valley Unified with like creating a policy to say that you have to vote on behalf of the board. That's like
Same one.
an expansion of this, right? Like,
I was not on the board during that, I remember hearing about it,
Okay.
but yeah. So I don't know.
Because there's no consequence, right?
No
You could have a
recourse.
board member going to Valley Unified and voting however they wanted to.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
that was that conversation.
Yes. Even if there's no consequences, it's still nice to have the guidelines.
Well, that's
Well,
most
then
of
we
these
can have
are like
guidelines,
that.
we don't need to have a policy. We have guidelines on how to, we get it from the MSBA.
It's in some of these ones that we just passed somewhat of a guideline to interact this.
There are other policies that specifically address communication between the board and staff regarding performance issues and things like that. So there is stuff out there. I'd just like to say a word on behalf of troublemakers. Troublemaking itself is not a bad thing. What does it mean to say troublemaking? It means you're making trouble for somebody. Sometimes that's just a pain. Other times, trouble needs to be made. It's a great American tradition to make trouble. Quite seriously. But the way you do it is critical.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you want to do it respectfully. You want to do it in a way where if you make a proposal and you lose, you move on, stuff like that. But none of those issues are addressed in this policy. What this policy said instead is, don't make trouble. Go through the superintendent. And you board members, don't go make trouble by talking to individual people. That sounds like, I don't know, that sounds communist to me, frankly. That's not what we're about. We should be able to talk freely. We have trouble, though, sometimes talking civilly. And when you say we haven't had problems in the board, How have you forgotten the way it was 4 years ago? Are you
I
nuts?
missed that.
It was awful. Now, I wasn't on board then, but it was truly awful. Some bad stuff was happening. And, and it will again, I'm sure, as we tackle difficult issues. You can't make a policy that prevents you from exercising good judgment, bottom line. But you do have to make a policy that allows people to speak their mind. If they can do it civilly, and that means teachers speaking their minds, board members speaking their minds, speaking to each other, we should not be afraid of that. And the remedy when things go bad is the exercise of good judgment. There's no way you're ever going to come up with a policy that bails you out. You'll have to bail yourself out by making good judgments. And that's just the way it is.
Can I make a recommendation? So I would recommend that, as Toby said, we throw this out because we don't have a problem. But I think whenever we bring on new board members, we make sure that we're sharing the information that was given to all of us from main school management about, the appropriate way to serve as a board member, which is, to make sure that you listen to people and you talk to people, but there is a chain of command, so that if somebody is trying to complain to you about a staff member, you can redirect them to the right. I think if we just have that open, honest, communication, I think it will be fine. If we do someday have a rogue board member, I think we address it at that time with that board member, or a rogue superintendent, or a rogue whoever. I think we just address the problem rather than trying to fix something that doesn't exist.
Yes. I agree with that.
That's my recommendation.
I'm not gonna fight with you on that. Today. I mean, and it might do us well to, because like Kelly said, there are a number of policies that talk about appropriate communications and things like that. It might do us well to take a look at what those all are. Because I remember we went over those like 4 years ago, about like when it's appropriate to do this, what the proper everything was. And Kelly's right, a lot of this touches, like we've got bits and pieces of it everywhere. I think it's the prohibitions that were weird in this one, and that's what made it different. There's a lot of talk about the appropriate chain of command.
Well, that's what I liked
Right,
about it.
right.
Is
That's
it
all
was
right.
it was a
Exactly.
sort of like a, okay, this is how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
That existed before this. I think we have policies on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So. All right.
So do we need a motion to do that, or we just don't
We should
put it
lay
in?
out
Okay.
She's done.
What is this? Get out. Go ahead. New business.
New business, items for information. We do have a few retirements to notify you about. The first one, you will see a letter from Mr. John Kaleta. Mr. Kaleta is providing you advance notice that after 37 years as an educator, he's going to do a lot more skiing. in his
I
own time.
wish.
Mr. Kaleta, we can only thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we're glad we still have you for a few more months. I hope to soon discuss with the board a plan for transition, for how we've had discussions as a team, but I do want to get the board's thoughts about that. I did mention to Toby at the beginning of this meeting that I think it'd be pretty wise for Toby and Sarah and I to kind of meet so I can bounce some ideas off of you guys and then bring it to the board in a future meeting for not only this position, but the others that we're about to announce. So thank you, Mr. Kaleta.
Thank you, it's been an incredible pleasure.
Need a motion.
I'll make the motion reluctantly.
A second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Passes. I didn't vote.
The second letter you will have is from our IT technician, Ms. Debbie Gaillon. Debbie is making her announcement well in advance, and she plans to be retired as effective October 1, 2024. I thanked Debbie for giving us well in advance notice so we could do some planning around this as well, and hope to be able to find somebody as qualified in the future as them, because she's been able to do some amazing things.
Can we get a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
And then the third is, was an adjustment to the agenda tonight. Anne Marie came to see me last week, and she had an envelope in her hand, and I said, I don't want that, I'm giving it to you anyway. And so she's announcing her retirement as well, effective June 28th, 2024. It's been 26 years for SAD 27. Again, this will be another difficult position to fill. Anne Marie has given her thoughts about where she thinks works and doesn't work in her position, and how she's feels that it needs to move, and she and I have some similar agreements about that, so it's another thing that I'd like to discuss and then share with the board where we think this needs to go. Technology has changed a lot since Anne Marie started, and bless her soul for rolling with the times, but it's now a totally new animal. So a lot of what Anne Marie does, I think I'd like to see given out to different staff members, that especially those pieces that are not technology specific. She does a lot with data reporting for the state, and I think that a lot of that can come out of central office. So we have some ideas. But Anne Marie, thank you for your years of service, and we wish you a long and happy retirement as well.
I will make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, thank you so much for your service. All those in favor?
Resignations, we have a resignation of an ed tech one-on-one. Haley Anderson sent this notification back on November 27, so she has been done. She has been finished for a little while. So this is for the exception of Haley Anderson's resignation.
So moved. A second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
We still have a school psychologist opening, but we do have a staff member who has enrolled in USM's school psychologist program. It's a 3-year program that's beginning next year, and they are very, very highly motivated to become a school psychologist, so we're going to support them. They're actually going to be working under the guidance of the Presque-Isle School Department, so a school psychologist, that's kind of like a mentor. So we're kind of excited about that.
That's fantastic. So we're gonna be able to fill their spot?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Item B is the substitute teacher rates. The minimum wage goes up on January 1st in the state of Maine to $4.15. Substitutes do work a 7-hour day, so if we were to keep the scales the way that they are, they would still be okay, because 7 hours at $14.15 is $99.05. Our base rate is currently $100. We feel that we should stay a little bit above minimum wage in order to stay competitive. A lot of our current substitutes have come to us because of the incentives that we offer and a little bit increased pay, and we feel that just bumping all of our rates up another $5 would be advantageous to the district. So we're recommending a $5 bump on all the scales.
Didn't we go over pay scales a couple months ago?
Every year in December for the past 4 years, we have risen this.
Okay.
Because of the
that's what I was
minimum
gonna say.
wage.
I remember we had just, there was a pay scale that we had seen one of
Yeah.
these past
We had
couple
looked at
months.
one just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember why. but we
Was it
did.
ed tech
thought
or was
the
it
ed
sub?
tech.
I thought it was the ed
subs,
tech.
But it was the incentives.
Oh,
We had looked at the
Oh.
incentives. yeah,
Okay.
the-
I knew we'd seen something.
yeah. It was when we were in the elementary school. That meeting.
Yes. We had added the mileage incentive at that time.
How will this affect the overall budget?
Good answer. Great answer, Lucy.
Pretty honest
About the
answer.
same as last few years.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
It varies.
it varies because it's predict.
Mhm.
You can't predict who's going to be out.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's always a need for the substitute teachers as well. We have a hard time probably filling the need.
We are very fortunate. We have a very healthy substitute list, knock on wood. Could always use more, but we still are an anomaly compared to some other school districts, because we do have a draw from the university still, even though we don't have a teacher program. A lot of those students want to come over and help out. So I think we're in good shape.
One of the ways that we've tempered some of the costs as well is in our latest, actually our last two contracts with the ed techs, is if someone's absent only for a period, we use an ed tech and we pay the ed tech more during that period. So when we have someone in-house that covers a partial day where we don't need to bring in half a sub for the day or a full day. So that's been very helpful.
That's good.
Do we need a motion to accept that?
I will make a motion. Approve the adjustment.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Item C is the Valley Unified Shared Services. This was brought to the Valley Unified Board. It identifies the services that we are currently sharing. One thing that I did share with that board is from now on, I'm going to bring it to the Valley Unified Board at the end of a school year to approve for the upcoming school year. Kind of weird asking you to approve or at least sponsor or give your thumbs up to something that's already in play. These are the shared services that we've had since the beginning of Valley Unified and what we continue to share. I think your Valley Unified board members were just looking for your support in them supporting this at the Valley Unified level.
So on the issue of timing, Ben, if we're gonna change when Valley Unified makes the decision, shouldn't we change when we review it to be more closely related to when? Because we're putting the cart
Right.
before the horse twice instead of just once instead of twice.
Right.
If we do this.
So my thought process was, because we're starting to work on budgets, bring the 2024-25 shared service proposal to Valley Unified, bring to this board first to kind of share what we think should be happening next year, and then have the Valley Unified board look at it prior to the adoption of the budget for Valley Unified,
So what month are we thinking?
February. So you'll probably see this again next month.
Yeah, because we're already halfway through the year.
Right.
Do we need to put anything formal in place to change that
No.
routine? We can just, from now on, do it in February?
Yep. We just never had this approval process or this, so it's new, so we have to time it appropriately.
So we need a motion to do
I
this
don't
for
even-
the current year?
I think your Valley Unified board members just want to know if
Okay.
you support that we are, as a district, supporting these shared
That we're
services.
halfway through supporting this.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, there was a lot. Was I the only one there?
No, it was me.
No, it was you, yeah. Sorry. I've been to so many of these, and I've gone through so many other with SAD 27 board members with me. It's like I've got shelf talk or something. Because there's also going to be some changes. They're talking about changes in staffing, and I think we had that conversation all together at one point, and that was all. So I just wanted to bring this. I think I was the one who suggested we bring this back to the boards for review. Sarah, you're aware, I'm a big fan of us making decisions here and bringing them back to the center to discuss. I think every board should be driving, and we go to our shared situation together, and we talk there. So I just wanted to have a discussion. Like Ben said, this is a half year. Well, this is approving something that's already been approved and approving something that's halfway done. I think for February, it's gonna make a bigger difference, and I think it's gonna be a more robust conversation. But if there's any questions about these shared services, about how this works, we can start talking about them now, but we also have until February, I think, before it matters.
Yeah.
I think we've all agreed to share these services to date effectively. Any thoughts on that?
My only thought is timing, right? So if you have one board in February that says, we would propose this, and you go to Valley Unified, and then the other boards go, oh, that's something we should talk, this could snowball and be in the middle of the year before we're discussing the year again.
Mhm.
That's my only,
Maybe backing it up from February for us to do our initial read of it?
I guess I would say if you're anticipating a big change, then maybe more lead time is appropriate.
Yep. The only change I'm proposing is what I'm gonna share with you in the next,
Right.
which would be reflected on these shared services for the upcoming year.
I have a lot of unknowns about the Valley Unified because I'm very new at this, so I have a lot of questions that probably won't need to have that in writing because I don't understand the whole concept of the Valley Unified still, so I still have a lot of boggling questions that I think I'll stand without voting on this one.
Well, and we will have, we'll be reviewing this again, and we should probably set it for January.
Yeah, I'll put it on the next one.
And for the 2024, 2025 year,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll all have a chance to look at that before then, so this is your warning, okay? And then we'll talk about it in the next meeting for the next year. Any questions, any comments, concerns? Dave?
No, we'll tackle it when we get to it.
Okay.
So do we need to approve?
I don't think, well.
This
let's-
year's
Let's approve this
still
year's, at
officially?
least put a patch on it.
Okay.
Um,
I move that,
It's the wrong.
yeah, okay, yes, I'm like, wait a minute. SAD 27 supports the 2023-24 Valley Unified Shared Service.
We're gonna vote for Frenchville. Okay, and he said, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? We have one abstention. Kevin?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the next item is our transition plan, and this would be reflected in when I bring the shared services to you next month. Instead of seeing assistant superintendent services in that second column, the second row, what I'm proposing is a director of human resources. So as you know, this is Giselle's last meeting with us. She'll be retired next week, Giselle? Next week. And so what we are proposing for a not immediate, but for 2024-25 school year, so we would go without an assistant superintendent for the balance of this year. And then during that time, look for a director of human services, human resources. And the reason why we are proposing this is human resources, HR work has become the biggest change since we started Valley Unified. It's become a monster of its own, not only with our enhanced recruitment and retention strategies, but just with a lot of stuff that happens day to day. And when you're dealing with 3 different contracts, 3 different unions, I say 3 contracts, we have more than that, with a multitude of contracts, a multitude of different employees, different, although we try to align them, policies, it's a lot. And so, although I've asked Giselle to do a lot of these tasks, which she has done very well, having an HR person opens up a pool of candidates that are not restricted by an assistant superintendent certification, which is a smaller pool of candidates, in my opinion, and they may not be experts in HR coming, to us from that. Giselle has been a union leader, and she's had a lot of so she had a lot of the skills to do that, and Lucy as well. I've learned on the fly, but I really feel that an HR person who has the appropriate training would make the difference, so that I could focus on teaching and learning, which is what is at the core of what I started as a teacher. I want to be involved in teaching and learning as much as possible, and so that's something that my heart tells me I need to fight for.
And we currently don't have any position that is HR.
We don't, so you're looking at HR right
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like even individually at each district, we don't have any
No.
sort of HR person.
No. So with that, I don't want to take an assistant superintendent off the table forever, because you're going to want a transition plan from me at some point in time. You're going to want somebody who's working with me, and then hopefully will become the superintendent when I, for whatever reason, decide that I've had enough of this crazy game. And we feel that it would be a good time to add back the assistant superintendent when Lucy decides that she no longer is going to be with us for her own reasons, be it retirement or whatever. So that's a future date thing, but it would be at kind of at that same time. With regards to our curriculum coordinator, which is Sharon Chassis, and our coordinator of innovative programs, Peter Kayanne, we feel that those two positions can be merged at a time when Mr. Kayanne and Ms. Chassis feel that they're ready to get done. And from conversations that I've had with them, it looks like their timing is going to be about the same time. So if it were not to be at the same time, for example, let's say Ms. Chassis would retire before Mr. Kayanne, I would ask Mr. Kayanne to adopt the curriculum work. So we would not be replacing either one of them, depending on who retires first. And you may be asking, okay, so if we don't have a director of finance at that point in time, because you're replacing with an assistant superintendent, we feel that this office, central office, has a person who is dynamic and could become your local SAD 27 local business manager out of that office. They have the skills, the tools, and they could just be the SAD 27 and Valley Unified, because we are the fiscal agent. And then Madawaska would have their own solution with their own person that would take care of 33, because those districts are a little bit smaller. So there's kind of some short-term and some long-term. Right now, for the short-term, what I would be bringing back to you next month on this sheet would be the elimination of the assistant superintendent and creation of a director of finance, director of human resources. Question?
So we're not going to be eliminating two positions. Is one person just going to be taking over both for curriculum and innovation?
I think
eventually.
I think the timing on those retirements are going to be pretty much the same. So we'd be looking for one person.
Just one person.
What's the, is the pay sort of the same for an assistant superintendent and a HR?
Yeah, so your director of HR, we have looked at the main school management data, and it's significantly under what an assistant superintendent average is.
Even better.
I don't know exactly the averages, but I ballpark.
That was as long as it's not more.
$20,000 to $30,000
Yeah. Okay.
difference.
Okay.
Before, when there was only one superintendent, where did all the work get delegated to? Not to be rude or blunt, but, you
Yeah.
know.
So I'm just going to stick to this district. This district, you had your own superintendent, you had your own director of finance, so you had Lucy, you had your own curriculum coordinator, you had Sharon Chassis. At that time, Mr. Kayanne was the adult ed director. So a lot of the employees that now we are sharing, you had alone here in this district by yourself. by combining Valley Unified, this district benefited in sharing some of those costs with the other districts. So you weren't paying your superintendent a full-time salary and benefits.
So we're
and
sharing the costs of the
sharing all the
superintendent.
costs, sharing all. So I'm probably one of the cheapest superintendents this district's ever had because of the way the cost sharing goes. The DOE pays half of my salary and benefits, and then we share the other half. Actually, it's 55% from the DOE, and the other 45% are shared between the three districts.
So I was thinking about the human resources piece, and historically, I remember us and the other districts taking staff and teachers from each other. I mean, we got a lot of good teachers from MSAD 33, and Madawaska got some good teachers from us, and there was always a bit of a back and forth, and I'm wondering if there's a conflict inherent in having human resources for all three districts.
Well, you've been having it for the past 4 or 5 years. And one thing that is a benefit is that when we're at the negotiating table, we can try very, we can not only try, but we know the data that's coming from the other two districts, specifically with contracts, so we can try to align them as best we can. And we feel that through aligning the contracts as best we can, we're going to see less and less of that migration. Because the disparities 5 years ago were so great. Now they're starting to merge a little bit closer to the middle.
I guess at the risk of sounding a jerk. Why wouldn't we want to be in a more competitive position in this district? If we can put ourselves out ahead of everybody and be poaching teachers from the other districts.
Mm-hmm. It's a fair point.
So that would make the division where you'd cut some of the Valley Unified portion.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, do we want to share that? If
Like we want you're saying that SAD 27 may want its own HR person so that they wouldn't feel any responsibility toward the other schools and would only worry about SAD 27.
Yes.
Wouldn't that give the less of the headache of running around and?
I'm just putting it out there as a thought I had. It's a competitive market.
Well, you
Why
don't
don't-
have the power of monopoly.
Well, you have a power monopoly, yeah. But we also can't go snatch somebody else's teachers if we want them.
Well, we have a great little combination in restraint of trade right now between the three
It's
school
true.
districts.
Even with the shared services now, you're saying, I mean, essentially we had shared HR and the teachers are still moving back and forth.
Not like they used to.
Mr. Johnson, can I say something?
Sure.
So the competitiveness could have existed for the past 4 or 5 years, but I think the ethics of your executive team has been such that we don't play against each community, each district, each department. I'll give you an example. As difficult as it is to get bus drivers, custodians, secretaries, anyone actually, there are 2 districts out of the 3 that don't have main purse PLD, and one does. But we've never, that one district has not looked to snatch and advertise, and so I think your executive team overall has been very ethical in how it handles HR.
Just to be clear, this is business. It's not unethical to snatch somebody else's employees.
I'm just saying it hasn't happened.
It may be unethical to not snatch somebody else's employees.
Well, that's an opinion.
Well, no, I mean, the question always is, when we're dealing with Valley Unified, is who serves who? And ultimately, we are beholden to our communities primarily. And this is something that I think bears discussion and thought. I'm more comfortable with shared services if they're contract shared services, like what Madawaska does with SAD 33 for business manager. I think that's a cleaner relationship. That way, it's just a relationship. And we can share services without sharing them under VU.
There's been a lot of water under the dam the past few years. Valley Unified was created in anticipation of a much greater unification than has been accomplished. And in the process of struggling through that, I think we've learned a lot. still learning about the benefits of being together, but also the drawbacks. And there are lots of benefits and there are lots of real drawbacks. And then there's a Department of Education policy that says, wants to mush us all together as much as possible, which I think was also a driving force behind Valley Unified. I think it would be a good time for us to go back to partners in Valley Unified, but also huddle amongst ourselves and say, given where we're at and what we project for the future, I think Madawaska, for instance, feels like it's on a very different trajectory than Fort Kent. And God help Frenchville and Santa Clara. They have huge challenges, right, with their school. If nothing else, it seems like a really good time for us to sit down together and say, where does it help us to work together? And where are we better off by going our own way? Because the communities are on different paths, and we've learned a lot, in the whole unified process. So as we think about restructuring the administrative team, which is really what we're doing here, with the beginning with Giselle's resignation, but just over the horizon, the inevitable retirements and so forth, maybe we should start talking about that. And at the very least, I'd be curious to know if Frenchville and Madawaska were open to that kind of discussion.
How different do you see the paths?
Well, I don't know.
That's a really broad thing to say, but ultimately we're just educating children, right?
Yeah.
But there's costs associated with
Right,
all
the
that as
costs are
well.
associated, and I understand that, but I don't know, I can't get behind us having our own director of human resources so that we can effectively take all the best instead of, and I get why you're saying that, and I think, but there's children all over the whole valley that want to be educated, and just saying, well, we're going to have our HR make sure that we go to these other districts that are next door and poach their best of their best, rather than let's work with when Kayanne was here. Let's use Kayanne to make ours great.
We're going to have a shortage is what we're coming up at a point we're going to have a shortage.
Yeah. I might not be mean enough to stay on this board at that point.
I was around when things were really bad. And I am particularly attuned to opportunities for conflict. And I see this as a great opportunity.
It sounds like you're looking for them.
No, I'm seeing them in advance.
Well,
But you're not actually proposing that we have our own HR director.
No.
You cited that as an example of some of the things that we might consider.
Yeah.
And if we were to get away from, if we had an wide open discussion about Valley Unified, we'd really be talking about, well, do we want to have a shared superintendent? Do we want to have a shared business manager? If we do, does it have to be in a Valley Unified structure, or could it be through cooperative agreements? What's the best structure? And in the process, we might be asking Madawaska, where do you think you're going?
Yeah, what works for you?
What works for you? And the same thing with Frenchville. I'm sure that the board members are really seriously concerned about these issues the same way that we are, but the problems they have are not the same as ours. I don't sense. The communities are very different. And I don't know, it just seems like a really good time to open a broader discussion about those things.
What's that look like for you? What do you envision when you talk about that?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean,
I was gonna say,
Retreat? We've been trying to get a retreat for 3 years.
it sounds just like we're trying to dissolve Valley Unified altogether, basically.
well, that's certainly an option,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of reasons not to do that.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think there's some real benefits that we all recognize behind Valley United. Not the least of which is sharing Ben's salary and sharing Lucy's salary and all that other stuff. That's a big deal.
Mhm.
I mean, that's, and there are other benefits too. I mean, when you share curriculum coordination, there's a benefit to uniformity and all these other things. On the other hand, it's very, very hard for us to make significant changes in our direction of our curriculum, for instance, or in our expenditures, in a group that operates together that closely. And we've learned there are all kinds of conflicts of interest for a superintendent, for instance, to be a superintendent of 3 districts. It's just unavoidable. I think the plan was good, and the idea was, I think, hopeful and well-intentioned, but the reality for all of us is it's a really tough place to be, frankly, as between 3 political entities working with all 3 and trying to manage the different needs of each of them. So we should look at that in a hard-nosed way. I don't have any predetermined outcome, especially now that we have a unified organization that can't boss around any one district. It acts with unanimity. I feel pretty comfortable with that. But we ought to also maybe, there's another possibility, and that it would be that we actually go to a more united one district. For instance, I would be willing to entertain the possibility of one district for Madawaska, Frenchville, St. Agathe, and Fort Kent, where instead of having 3 districts that are halfway there, maybe we have one district. And we enact the legislation to do that. That might be a good idea.
I would say I'd be more comfortable with that. I mean, I've been pretty vocal opponent of a lot of Valley Unified because it doesn't have the process is weird, and it makes me uncomfortable because it's not representative, and that's always made me uncomfortable. I mean, I like the benefits. I mean, and we can go through the benefits, and I'm glad for them. But I have to admit, I'd be more comfortable with an RSU than I am with Valley Unified.
There's a world of difference too between saying one school versus one district. The issue that we just got behind us was one school. I mean, until it comes up again, at least but that's a completely different issue than one administrative district. You can have one administrative district with lots of schools. The issue isn't really having a unified school necessarily, unless you want one. The issue is merging the managerial functions and then distributing the tax load in a way that's fair to each of those communities. We really should explore that, I think.
The cost would probably be distributed a little bit better and probably cost effective.
Has that discussion come up at a Valley Unified meeting?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Well, we have right now their incentives built in Kenya that don't allow us to do anything but keep the regional service center. Like Ben's salary situation is tied directly to Valley Unified's existence as is it an RS center? What are we calling it now?
Education Service Center.
Educational Service Center. So I mean, a lot of this was theoretical until somebody gets into office and changes the rules on us again, right? But right now we're getting a benefit by being part of BU, and I can't deny that. I think a lot of this stuff is really helpful and really good.
Oh, absolutely. There's no denying that.
So, Sarah, even quiet.
It's all, a lot to think about, a lot to process.
What do you need from us tonight? Because Giselle is leaving us, whether we like it or not. And in order for you to move forward, do we need this motion tonight?
You don't need anything.
What does it do as far, do we tie your hands in any way if we don't make the motion tonight?
So what I'm saying is, if I don't have a replacement for Giselle in some fashion, be it an HR director or an assistant superintendent, by July 1, 2024, I can't do this job.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying, in its current structure. Now, all the discussions of whatever are going to be on the table, but this administration cannot operate with Giselle gone, or somebody doing some of those tasks.
So she's leaving here in the next week or so. Where's her work being delegated from here till the end of the year?
That's what we need to find out. We need to find out how painful it is to not have that. and I don't want to try to fill her position on a whim with the wrong person, which is why I wanted to give 5 to 6 months to find the right fit.
But if you delegated the work to other individuals that are equipped for the, then would you, in return, you're gonna know because you haven't filled her position.
I'm
would
going to
you-
absorb most of the work that she's always done.
And that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
I can't delegate. I mean, I'll look to my team to see what they have, but I can't ask Mr. Karen to negotiate contracts with, with the teachers union. I mean, that's not his skill set. No offense, Mr. Karen. And that's just one example. We all have our own skill set, and I'm going to absorb a lot of what Giselle is doing.
So I personally haven't heard anything tonight that, like, I'm perfectly happy to make this motion right now. But I wasn't sure with the discussion that was having if people needed more time. Maybe the best way is just for me to make the motion. I moved that MSAD 27 support the Valley Unified Administrative Transition Plan as presented.
And I'll second Sharon's motion.
There's nothing saying that this can't be altered
No.
between now and July 1.
You're just supporting a plan right now.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you're going to have to adopt the shared services,
Right.
which is what goes in the interlocal agreement.
And I think so we're doing our meeting for Valley Unified next, and I think that's where we're gonna start talking about, we're gonna talk about shared services next month here. And I think that's where the rubber's gonna hit the road, is us talking about shared services, because this is all gonna affect that, right?
Yeah.
I think the sense of urgency created by the open-ended question is good, because it actually creates a little spur to get us to do something rather than nothing.
Exactly.
This isn't an easy discussion to have, and everybody's kind of tired, right? But if the issue's not resolved, then it helps us to engage. And so my opinion is we ought to leave it open and not try to resolve it tonight.
I agree with that.
We have a little time, maybe not a lot, but we have the spring.
When's our next meeting?
This meeting?
When's our next meeting?
January 22.
January 22.
And when's the next VU meeting?
January 2.
Carrying the wire.
We don't have time between now and then. But we were looking to have something, to basically have a real discussion in February for the shared services for Valley Unified, right?
Mhm.
I'm inclined to keep the next board meeting really light, and this be the first thing we talk about. That's how I would want to address this. I think we need to have a real discussion about where we're going, and I think we should be looking at what the proposed shared services are, what this is, in January, in preparation for bringing something to Valley Unified in February. That's my opinion.
Could we have a cost laid out on just the shared costs in between each other and what it was before and after Valley Unified, so we can, because I don't know that breakdown.
Again, the other ones are 5 years old, so.
Right.
Yeah, they're really
there's
old.
a difference.
Yeah.
There's at least 2 positions that have been eliminated since the formation. They were absorbed through attrition, and they were in central office. One, our central office, and one in SAD 33.
What were those positions again?
HR related, both of them. And since then, you have a governor that loves creating employee leaves and family medical leaves, and that's all HR related.
Toby,
Right.
are you planning to, at the VU meeting on January 2, discussing any of this at that level?
I think it's on the agenda. It is, right?
It will be.
It will be. And I think we start having a conversation there. VU feels very different than it did before.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to have just an open and honest conversation about what we all need. But I think feels like change is coming and it makes me uncomfortable, to be honest. That's all there is to it. Change is coming and it makes me uncomfortable. And I'd like to know what, I mean, I said I'd bring this to this team. We met last month and we had a discussion, and I indicated that we should all probably bring this stuff back to our respective teams. I mean, as far as I think Kelly raised cost issues. I think some cost projections for this proposal, that wouldn't be a bad thing to look at,
No, not at all.
right?
Mm.
So we make informed decisions. I think we talked about that in VU. It was, what's his name from Madawaska brought that up. Talking about cost issues. I think making an informed decision is a good thing. I understand you need to support Ben, and I think we should get you the support.
That's why I think it should happen sooner than later.
Well, it can't happen until
Well,
after.
exactly, but I mean,
So.
we can't keep drawing it out either.
Well, there's a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor of the motion, which is SAD 27 supports the Valley Unified Administrative Transition Plan as presented. All those in favor? 3. Opposed? 3. I move that we revisit this in our January 20th meeting with the goal of resolving it finally at the January 20th meeting.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Item E is the ratification of the bargaining agreement between the SAD 27 and administrative support employees. You received a summary of that in your packet, which also includes the salary scales. So I guess I'll open it up to any questions you may have about what was offered and what was accepted. By the way, every administrative secretary was so bummed we canceled our last meeting because they want this ratified. Because it is retro. The contract has been expired since June, the end of June, so.
Well, let's not waste any time. I move to support the ratification of the 2023-2026 bargaining agreement.
A second.
between 27 and administrative support employees.
Who's the second?
Me.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Can I get a motion? Let's take do we want to take no, let's just go into executive session. Can I get a motion to enter an executive session? Pursuant to 1 MSRSA, Section 6A,